Hello. This week I'm going to return to my farm scatter items because there's a few things that I've left out over time. So what I'm doing now is I'm plugging some of the gaps that that I thought, yeah, that'd be nice to have one of them there. I've got cow sheds, I've got a farm building and everything else, but one thing I've not actually built is like a pigsty area. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do today. So basically I've just raided my useful box to find different bits and bobs that I've got. I've got this paper that was from a biscuit box, and I'm going to utilise that as obviously corrugated card, but corrugated steel. But the thing is, if I make it just out of that, it's really not going to be strong enough. So I grabbed a couple of my lids out, and what I'm thinking of doing, I'm going to experiment with it first, is I'm going to cut this in half, cut the back off, and then glue that over it, and that'll give it its strength. And then obviously it needs a plate on the front, which again I'll probably strengthen with plastic. But yeah, so that's what I thought I'd do. And then obviously I've got a few walls. I've got some not really to scale plastic fencing, but I could probably utilise that as a gate. And then, as with the other animals that I did in the previous video, I've got some warlord animals here. So I've got a couple of pigs and small pigs that I can make up from this, but I've also got some of these metal pigs from Pentracken, and yeah, I think they'll work quite well. So basically what I'm thinking of doing is I'm using this foam board. I like using plastic card really, but I haven't got any more. This should be strong enough because it's going to be braced with walls, so hopefully it won't bow, which is the only problem with the card. But what I'm thinking of doing is I'll cut this down and then make the front of it, and then, like I say, use a plastic gate. And then if you can imagine these, I'll perhaps do a couple of them down one end, and then it's going to be largely mud. So it should be a reasonably simple build. So what I'll do is I'll get these cut, and then I'll bring you back. Right, so what I've been doing, as I said, I've cut my two pieces of lid now into the curved shape of that I'm going to make the pigsty. But before I started constructing them, I thought it might be an idea to get my walls right, and then I know what area I've got to work within. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some my glue gun to stick these down quickly. I mean, they will be firmed up when I start putting down the floor and the ground inside, but I need something that's just going to hold them quickly in place. So, main thing I've got to do is get it down while it's still melted. Down a minute. I'll get it straight. Yeah, let's grip that. Just right, done it? Yeah. Speed is of the essence. Not my best quality, as you can probably tell. This right. You got a few seconds, haven't you, to work with it. Not sure I like the way this one's sitting though. Not quite right. No. I'll take that up because I'm not happy with it. That was a lot more painless than I thought it was going to be. Better. And this is where my OCD kicks in, because I've got to have it right. It'll annoy me forever if it don't look right. Sorry about that. The battery went. Professional as ever, you can see. I need another glue. Bear with me a second. Right, so I've stuck all of this in place now, and trying to make sure it's reasonably straight as well. It's alright, I've got a bit of thread of the glue gun. But what I have also done is I've filled some of these gaps with the glue gun as well. Thought it might speed the process up a bit, and it don't look too bad. So that's in place, so I know now what space I've got to work with. And what I've done is I've got some little plastic, it's from a packet that soldiers were in, and I've cut a front and a back for the pigsty. Now basically this is just going to be to give the paper some strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the paper on top of that on both sides, so you won't see the plastic, but it will reinforce it. And then obviously that will then sit like that, making the actual pigsty, you know, fairly simple kind of thing that a farmer had put together with just what he's got hanging around. So I wanted it to look, you know, fairly rough and ready. So, and then what I've done is I've just cut the paper ready for the dome part, and that's got to be stuck on. And as I say, on the front and back as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'll glue these all in place and then I'll bring you back. Right, so these have dried now. The paper's stuck on to all the plastic reinforcement bits. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my glue gun again to put these together, because I figure that's going to be probably the quickest way of doing it, and it'll hold it firm. So first of all I just need to get it in position where I want it, and then I can actually hide the glue on the inside. Give that a few minutes to go off. That'll be the front one. Let's get the back on. Pull out all the threads. And just give it a bit of time to dry. A little bit in the top there. And that's it. Right, I'm going to stick this other side on, and then it'll be complete. Right. And that's that one. So I'm just going to let them dry now, and while I'm waiting for them to dry, I'm going to use this. It's not really the right colour, but I've got a lot of it to use, so I might as well use it. And I'm going to give this all a prime coat now on the wall while they're going off, and then it'll be ready to start painting up and fitting things in. Right, I'll bring you back in a second. And then the other thing that I've just been doing is I've been sawing one of these oil drum barrels that I've got. You've probably got some kicking around, and I've just cut that in half, hollowed out all the little, you know, spines of plastic where it's obviously been printed or whatever, and then I'm just painting it up like this one with undercoat before. Obviously I'll give it a steel finish, one for the food and one for the water. So as you can see, I've given my pigs an undercoat as well, I decided to go for a few more because there was a few more on the sprue. And I thought, well, why not? If I don't use them now, when am I going to use them? So they're all painted. They just need painting up now. Obviously I've got my 2 barrel halves that have got to be painted up. I've just rounded those off at the front because I just thought it had a slightly better look. So they'll need painting up. But what I'm going to start by doing is the walls. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to be doing, if you remember the garden that I did like a multicoloured type stone on this. I don't want to do that on this. I want it to be more basic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a reasonably dark grey paint first, and then when that's dried, I'll give it a little brush over with some lighter grey just to highlight it a bit. But I want to keep it fairly simple. I mean, it is a pigsty, so right. So I'm going to go for Army Painter Necromancer Cloak to paint my walls. Just put a small bit in the pot. Don't need to be too careful with this, so I can use this big brush. The main thing is I want to get it deep down into all the brick pattern, so when I do the dry brushing it'll pick it out. Right, well, get the rest of this painted up and then I'll bring you back when it's time to do the dry brush. So I thought while I'm waiting for this grey to dry on the wall, I might as well press on and get these painted up. And I'm going to use some plate mail metal from Army Painters. I will mess this up a bit when it's dried, you know, put a bit of rust on it or something, so it don't look too pristine, but you see how it's going to look. As I say, I'll be able to give this a wash when it's dried and tone it down a bit, and then maybe even add a bit of rust powder in places, so that will, you know, make it look less pristine than it does at the minute. You're not going to see the inside so much, but I'm going to paint a bit of it in case you can see it. So that's that painted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry, just make sure that I have coated it properly. I'm going to paint these two up similarly, and obviously this, the second one. So I'll get them done, and then I'll bring you back. Right, so my walls have dried now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a dry brush using Spaceship Exterior by Army Paints, just to bring that up a bit and to give it a bit more definition. I want to be sparing, I don't want to get too much on the brickwork. Oh, and I've also painted the pigs as well, but just giving them their first coat, because I'm going to have a different breed to that, but I'm just getting all the pinks on first. But anyway, back to the wall. So I'm just getting my paint on the brush and then brushing most of it off. Right, so you can see what that's doing to it. It's only a subtle change, but it just gives it a bit more definition, because obviously you've got the darker colours sitting back in the gaps. Right, so I'm going to carry on doing that all the way around and on the inside as well, and then I'll bring you back. Right, so I've given the pigs another little coat, and what I've done now is I've used some balsa wood just to cut down 2 gate braces, you know, for either side of the gate, you know, for in the gap, and obviously they'll be going in there like that. You can't see it, but one either side, and then the gate between. I've scored it a bit to make it look a little bit more weathered, and I'm going to paint it with this Vallejo old wood, and then I'll let it dry, because I've painted my gate already. As you can see, it's leaning against that pot. I'm not going to bother with a primer or anything on a little bit like this, because it's balsa wood. It's going to suck it up anyway, so that ain't going to be an issue. Right, that's them done. Right, basically what I've got now is a little bit of drying time, because I've, like as I say, I've coated the pigs, so they're drying. I've got these wood things, they're drying. The gate's drying. The actual base is pretty much ready, so I can probably start this, putting the base down in this now. So let me just get this cleared up and put to one side, and then we'll start basting up the main pigsty. Right, so what I'm going to do now then is use some of this Geek Gaming basing glue. I'm just going to squirt a little bit out into a container. Right, just need to paint this on the inside. And try not to get it on the walls. I mean, it doesn't matter if I splash it a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the edge first. I'm not going to do this outside at the moment because I'm playing with the idea of perhaps doing a weathered looking grass on the outside, so I'm going to do them one at a time so I can give some thought to that. Right, put it in my tray. You've seen me use this before. Basically what it is, it's some sieve soil from the back garden, which obviously I've baked just to make sure there's no nasties in it. And then basically I filtered it into a very fine and reasonably fine texture, and then basically added some tile grout to it. And I'm finding this makes a really convincing earth finish because, after all, it's mainly earth. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a sprinkle of the light, very fine. Now I'm going to put just a little spread of this slightly coarser one, and I'm going to do it in the areas that I'm going to want to be the most kind of muddy, where the pigs have been in it a lot. That's it, that'll do. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get something to seal this with and give it a bit of a spray. So let me just put a few things away and we'll take that outside and give it a little spray. I spoke too soon, it's decided to chuck it down outside, so I'm going to give it a quick spray here. So just basically misting it really. Right, so it's just a question of letting that dry now, and then I can start weathering the actual pig beds and the feeding trough and everything, and just paint up the pigs, and then we can start bringing it together. Right, back in a second. Right, so while I'm waiting for this to dry, I've been putting a bit more colour onto my pigs. I'll just show you how they're looking at the moment. Put a bit of light on that so you can see it a bit better. So they've all been done in that mottled kind of pattern. And now what I'm doing is I'm using some Army Painter Strong Tone wash on this just to take the obvious shine off of it. Don't have to overdo it. It will dry okay anyway. I want it to look, you know, patchy and, as I said before, I'm going to add a little bit of rust, not too much. A little bit of rust finish on it after I've done that. But you can see how that's took that down now from how it was. It's not looking so pristine. I'm going to do the same on the gate. I want it to look like it's well worn. You're not going to have anything too clean round pigs now, are you? Although they do say that pigs are one of the cleanest animals. I don't quite know how that works though. But hey ho. Right, that's that. Just let that dry. Do the same on these little feed-in barrels that I've made. It started drying a little bit, so I thought while it's still slightly damp, I'm going to put a few rust spots on that. I'm going to use this Umbra weathering powder. I don't really want too much, but I can mix this into the sticky areas of it. And that'll just do some spots here and there. Right. I suppose the exposed edges are about favourite for this. Really don't want to overdo this, otherwise it's going to spoil the effect. Trying to put it where I think the water or rain would pool on it and start to, so I guess that's going to be where it runs down the sides. Right, as you can see, I've not gone mad with it. I've just done little bits here and there. It's very tempting to you know, put more on, but to be honest, it's better with just a small amount. So that's that one done. That's it. That's that one. Trying to keep it reasonably light on it. That's better. Yeah. Right. Now really we'll let everything dry and then I'll bring you back. Right, so I've had a bit of change of mind here. Originally, I had intended to actually stick the pigs and the pigsty home things in the base. But then I thought, you know, storage-wise, that might be a bit awkward, you know, because there's a chance of damaging it. So in the interest of making it easier, you know, to store, I've decided I'm going to base up the pigs like I did with the other animals I did. And then I can put them where I want them as well, because if I've got troops hiding behind these walls or taking cover, I might want to move the pigs around depending on what's happening. So I've took a little bit of time out to just get these bases ready, and I've cooked 2 little ones as well for the troughs. So that's going to make it a lot more mobile, and then these and the pigs can be stored in a little box with this, and then nothing gets damaged and it's easier to pack away. In the meanwhile, what I'm going to do now, before I start basing up the pigs, is I'm going to put a bit of rough pasture around the edge of this. So let's get me tray in. Right. Reasonable brush for the job. That one I'll keep control of. Little container for me glue. Using basing glue again. Obviously I don't want to spill too much, get too much on the wall. Again, not going to put it on too thick because it'll just take forever to dry. And you don't need it. That's it. Bring it up, you'll be able to see it a bit more. That's enough of that. Right. I think I'm just going to tip off some of the excess now. The beauty of it is it's not going to go all over my desk. That's looking good. Right. Tip that back in its container. Right, I'm going to let that dry for a bit. I'm not going to leave it there because I've decided I want to have, you know, some shrubs and bushes in places around the wall just to make it look a little bit more, you know, it looks like a bit clinical the way it's sat there in the middle of that. So I thought if I had a few edges and things, I've got two tones here. I've got a slightly lighter one and a very dark one. So I'm going to add a little bit of that later, but I'm going to let that dry first. Right, so I'll bring you back when I get to the next stage. Right, so I've brought you back because I'm going to put some of these little bits of bush and things on here now. And what I've been doing, and it's a good idea to do this really because I never used to do this and then I'd regret something, is I've just put it on dry just to see how it looks. And then I've moved it around until I'm happy with the overall look. And now all I've got to do is go around and glue them in place. And I'm just going to use some of this basing glue for that as well. Same with this one. And the last one. Right, all I've got to do now is let that dry, and once it's dry we'll give it a coat of the sealing spray as well, just to make sure that it's, you know, completely, you know, solid and it's not going to come off. Right, so in the meanwhile, push that to one side and let that dry. What I'm going to do now is where I've based my pigs, I'm just going to paint a little bit more of this on so I can put the soil around the base of the pigs, you know, so they match with what they're standing on. Obviously I want to be a bit delicate here because I don't want to get it on the pig itself. And with this, all you got to do now is just dip it in. Shake it off. There you go. Put the bit. That's it. That's them based. So I'm going to carry on. I'm going to do that to the rest of the pigs now. And then I'll bring you back when we're ready to wrap this one up. Right, back in a minute. Well, you know how I am. I can't resist the little details. So I've mixed up a tiny bit of resin just to fill the water trough. I couldn't resist it. I thought, well, you know, might as well do it. That's it. Alright. So that's the water trough. I'll leave that to dry now. And what I thought for the food trough is I've got some dried tea leaves. And what I've done is I put a few specks of the pasture in it to give it a bit of a two-tone look. And I'm going to put that in the other trough as food. So that's a little food trough. We'll let that dry. I didn't show you the resin one. That's the water. Right. Pigs are based. Troughs are full. Waiting for that to dry, and then we're going to give it a sealing spray, and this time we really will be back to wrap it up. Back in a sec. Right, it's complete. It's still drying, as you can see. It's, you know, you can see the white of the PVA still, because it's wet through here where I've sealed it all in. But essentially it's done. So I thought, you know, I'll just bring it together and just tie the video up. As you can see, it's perfect for a bit of cover. You can, the beauty of you know, I've been able to take these in and out. You could have one in, you could have only a few pigs in there. You can move the pigs around. Obviously the pigs would probably move away if the troops were coming in. So it gives you a bit of flexibility, and it's easy to pack away. So, and it really, you know, it helps to build up the picture in my farm setting, because I've got lots of outbuildings, and I've got a farmhouse itself. I've got cattle sheds and things like that already, but I haven't got a pigsty area, and you know, it's nice to be able to just, you know, have something that I can use, and it also creates cover. So, right, well, what I'll do is I'll put some pictures on, and I'll call this one finished. So thanks for joining me. I hope you found it useful, and, you know, if you've got any suggestions or other ideas for farm type things that I could build, you know, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I have got one other little project that I'd like to do, because I've got a chicken house and things like that. So I may be looking at that in the near future as well, because that'll be my farm, give me quite a bit of farm material and terrain, and complete the set really. So anyway, I'm rambling on. Thanks again for joining me. If you have liked it, please consider giving me a thumbs up. And why not subscribe? And then you'll get to see when the next one drops. Thanks again for joining me. Bye for now. Bye.